Right on. Diamond Garcia, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And let's just continue what we're talking about.
Sure.
So I was saying, when people are displaced on the mainland, when I lived in California, you can't make it in San Francisco, so now you got to move like to the East Bay, or even the SAC, God forbid. I'm like, okay, and what? Like, you can still drive to go see your family on the weekends. Like, you probably don't see them every week anyway. Like,
Right.
Work harder, increase your skills, go compete in that economy in the Bay if that's where you want to be. In Hawaii, if somebody's auntie, grandma cannot pay her property taxes in Makaha because values went up or something, I don't feel so, aloof to that.
I agree.
I'm like, no, we got to figure out a way to
we
keep
got to
her.
do something.
Keep her from moving. Like, she cannot go Vegas. We need her here.
Right.
And that kind of makes me, I like capitalism generally.
Right.
Of course, there's dirty stuff that comes with that. Generally, I don't like over-regulation and more government. I was in the Coast Guard.
Yep.
We talked about that off camera.
Right.
But it kind of makes me a hypocrite, right? Like in California, whatever, just sink or swim, bootstraps. Here, I'm like, no. Auntie cannot move. We cannot let that happen to Auntie.
Yeah.
I'm a hypocrite, right?
Well, I think capitalism is the use of a version of economy that benefits most people. Because, yes, there will be people who suffer along the way because that's just the way the market works. But the vast majority benefits. I think if people are not benefiting from your decisions, that's not true capitalism. So if grandma is priced out because of business decisions in the Hawaii market, then that's not true capitalism because you should not be displacing your own local people. I think the reason why property values have gone up, which then increases property taxes, is unfair to locals because what drives the prices to go up, that's the outside influences. The international market, the mainland buyers who come in with cash on hand. And locals just can't compete with that. So that drives up the property values in their community. They're forced to pay more in property taxes because their value went up. And that's just not right.
So we do real estate. We do it at a high level. We're one of the top 10 teams in the state according to this thing called Real Trends. We do a lot, and we do good at media, and so therefore we get a decent amount of relocators. Some are Hawaii people moving back home, and we always love that.
That's awesome.
But some are not, But some are still adding to the community, like a oncologist gonna work.
We need those
at Straub and Palimomi, and we need that, right? And we're conflicted because we do sell to mainland people. It's unconstitutional to discriminate. We cannot discriminate, nor would we. However, do you think that I think that one thing you said, I disagree, but I'm gonna challenge you on that. Outside people driving the prices up. Did you know there are more people from the mainland buying in Hawaii 10 years ago than now? Yeah. People, but because social media is so loud and it's the town square and it's so fast paced, the memes, the ku'e on Instagram is like, wow, these people from the mainland. Well, it wasn't as loud and as vocal in 2010, in 2000, in 1990. But as a percentage, people in a lot of those times were buying more homes from the mainland than they are now. People think that post-COVID, mainland relocators caused all this. But local people are actually buying more homes now than back then. Perception's reality, though.
Yeah.
So I don't like encouraging local people to think, oh, well, mainland people, that's why I cannot buy. While there's some varying degree of truth to that, because there are external circumstances, that doesn't serve anyone. It doesn't serve anyone to focus on that.
Right.
Like, oh, I would buy but cannot because these mainland people. Like, that doesn't help that person advance their skills or create a side hustle.
For sure. And I think what we have to do is empower local people to be able to buy. What's sad is you have lots of local families who are in a place where they can't qualify to buy. They can't get a mortgage. Their credit score is bad because it's so expensive here in Hawaii. Paying bills, you got to choose which one to pay sometimes, right? Yeah. But I think if we can educate people enough to know that if you keep your credit score good and you have certain things lined up, you will qualify for a mortgage. I had a pretty good talk with Peter Savio. Peter Savio,
No.
a local developer for years here in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
So his take on housing piqued my interest a bit. And basically, in 1960, the legislature did a study saying, why do we have a housing problem? This is in 1960.
Okay.
The population was a lot smaller back then here in Hawaii, but yet we had a housing crisis back then. Same problem today. Now, did we not build hundreds of thousands of homes here in Hawaii from 1960 till now? So why do local families still have no places to go, right? And so a lot of that is, yes, we can build more homes, but are we going to ensure that they remain in the affordable market forever? So what that means is, if I buy a house that's affordable, $500,000 for a 4-bedroom, that's like affordable right here in Hawaii.
Are you talking about affordable, like government subsidized housing programs where they partner with you? And
yes and no. So right now Hawaii is on a mission to build a bunch of new affordable homes, right?
Yeah.
The governor signed his housing proclamation, which is quite controversial, but part of that is to basically build more homes so that there's more on the market for local families. But I think we did that before, 60s, 70s, 80s. We built lots of new developments. Kapolei was one of them. John Waihee, the late 80s, had the whole vision for Kapolei. And yet here we are today. There are lots of locals there, but there are also lots of non-locals there. Mm-hmm. And a price right now for a house is you're approaching $1 million, right? Yeah. Whereas back in 1992, when the first increment was up for sale, that was like $200,000.
Yeah.
So the value is going up. If we tied them, so say, for example, that they qualify to buy that affordable unit in 1990 at 80% AMI. When they sell in 30, 40 years from now, their house will appreciate, of course, but they have to sell in that 80% AMI.
And also the government shares in the equity that they build.
Right.
That's why I don't like those programs.
Yeah.
I don't, so in Kapolei, to pick a townhome,
right.
We have clients where I say, this one's $400,000. The ones like it are like $500,000, $550,000, 80%, like you're saying, right?
Right.
Oh, killer. Like, I want that. Okay, well, if you're VA 0 down, definitely not. If you need to put 20% down, the difference in that down payment is about $20,000, et cetera. If somehow you can figure out the $20,000, then you experience 10 years of appreciation, and you're walking away with hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity. Hopefully tax deferred because you lived in it 2 out of the last 5. You have a partner, etc. If you cannot be partnered with the government and have them take a significant portion of the equity that you grew, that's better. Also, you'll have more equity because you can sell higher. Right. So all those programs, I don't like them. Yeah. Controversial take. There's a place for Hawaiian homelands. I wish that more Hawaiians would figure out how to buy fee simple, appreciating homes.
I agree.
I don't love it for the 25-year-old brada working in Pearl Harbor.
Sure.
I love it for a 70-year-old auntie.
Yeah.
Just wants to live out her life, know.
Right.
I believe in real estate as a wealth building machine, and whether it's a leasehold Hawaiian homelands or affordable housing, there's catches to that.
Totally. Yeah. And that's why when you think of Hawaiian homelands, right, the intent of Prince Kuhio in 1920 was to get Hawaiians on the land. Right. And that would be their land for their generations in perpetuity. Of course, he was one Hawaiian in a Congress full of white men who back then were totally racist. So they put in that blood quantum requirement to the point where we know in a few generations there'll be none left. But today, Hawaiian homelands, they're trying to get people into homes, right? But there are lots of, like you mentioned, there are old kupuna who are on the list. They've been on the list for like 50 years, and they just want a place. They're living with their kids and all that stuff. They need a place. Now, would that mean a 4-bedroom house? Probably not. Yeah. So I think the department should venture off into building things like townhouses for kupuna housing, young adult housing, townhouses, right? But they got to work on getting people off the list, because this has been 100 years since that act passed Congress in 1920. So 123 years.
Oh, wow.
And we have 9,700. Yes.
103 years.
103.
Yeah, 103 years. Yeah.
So in that time frame, about 10,000 leases were awarded out.
Okay.
And we have 29,000 on a wait list right now. So the state has failed miserably in their fiduciary duty to the Native Hawaiian people. And the whole goal of Prince Kuhia was put them on the lands so that their kids and grandkids and grandkids and great-grandkids can stay there forever. They have a home here in Hawaii. What we're seeing now is lots of grandparents who got the homestead. They died, their kids got it, but they all intermarry, so the blood quantum is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, to the point where when their parents die, they got to move out because they don't have that 25% to pass on. And that's not right. That is not right.
Is that up for revision? Can it be revised?
Congress would have to change that because that was a congressional act. But is our congressional delegation pushing for that or fighting for that? No, they're not. I think Kaikahele had a initiative where he tried to lower the blood quantum on successorship. I don't think it passed though.
Oh, okay.
No.
You know, I grew up around a lot of victim mentality. I was born on the mainland, moved to Hawaii mid-childhood.
Okay.
And just a lot of, well, I would, but I could, but not my fault. You see how they treat me. It's never been fair for me. Had a lot of that around me.
Yeah.
In my growth, towards financial and relational success and whatever, moving, 39 years old now, the biggest thing has been self-accountability and rejecting any, like if I get into a victimness, I'm like, I gotta crawl, like I'll acknowledge it and then I gotta stop and crawl out. And so I wake up every day and I think, at least it's not, there could be any other year. Could be the year 800 BC. Could be
that's true.
800 AD. Could be 1600. Could be pre-industrial revolution, pre-plumbing, electricity.
Yeah.
And so people cannot afford to buy houses now, and I get it. It's tough.
Yeah.
I'm not lacking empathy and sympathy. However, look, Filipinos.
Yeah, that's true. They all
what they do.
come together, right?
Immigrants, right?
Yeah.
So they have an immigrant edge.
Right.
They have that edge of like, hey, we're not in Cebu, Philippines. We're not there anymore.
Right.
We're not in Solo or like the dangerous part of the Philippines or Sulu, Solo, whatever. So, a 10-bedroom in Waipahu, we all hui, then we all put our money together, and eventually, maybe an entire generation, the next generation is really platformed to build wealth. Like, there, immigrants in this country, look at Jewish people in the East Coast, whatever, they take that approach, right?
Right.
Dr. Tupola said her thing was, hey, you heard about the homeless camp and Auntie, I forget her name. Twinkle's. And Waianae, like, we bought land and we're building them. They're homeless. They're homeless encampment.
Right.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
So that's like when you empower them, not enable them, right? So I think the government has, especially one party, has done a great job at enabling the problem versus empowering them to rise up themselves and conquer.
How do you change that thought process and that paradigm? It really takes a certain leader and figurehead in a community to shift that.
Yeah.
Right?
Education. I think at this point, see, people say that, Hawaii is a lost cause because it's a blue state. But
we're a different kind of blue.
We are, exactly. And
I always tell people that moving from the mainland, like, we're not your Portland,
Seattle, exactly.
We're not that blue. We're I'm like, that thing and where the earthquake hit Japan and then everyone lined up for their ration and they just took one and they put their head down and took their one. Like, we're that blue.
Yeah.
Like a socialist Asian kind of like.
Right.
Everybody, hey, no. Like, some people don't like Trump, right? Like,
right.
Hey, be humble.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't be all boisterous and like, be humble, be quiet, and just help each other out. And so if the thing you're voting on or the person you're voting on represents like humility and helping, we're like almost like a classic
we're culturally blue. Yes, we're a classic, I think, JFK liberal of the 1960s. But because Hawaii has such a low voter turnout, lots of the locals here who have conservative values are not voting, and the older generation who was raised in Hawaii during the plantation era, right? So they grew up seeing their parents work on the plantation. Like, for example, my grandma, was raised on the sugar plantation on Kauai.
Oh, yeah?
And lots of local families have the same story, right? Where they grew up then. And back then, in 1954, the Democrats came to help them with labor issues, labor laws, make it more better workplace. Unionize.
Okay.
And so from that era, my grandparents' generation, who are now in their 70s and 80s, they grew up knowing that the Democratic Party is the good guys because they're helping us organize labor unions and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But that was the party of JFK in 1963. The party today is completely different. I mean, just 20 years ago, take, for example, social issues. Yeah. I think most Republicans and Democrats and independents agreed on most social issues. There were differences on how you run government, how you disperse taxpayer dollars, right?
Yeah.
But today it's completely different. So in Hawaii, we have the older generation who is deadlock loyal Democrats because that's just the way they lived that experience. Won't hold that against them.
Yeah.
But I think lots of younger people who are in my age group, 20s, 30s, who are now realizing, wait a minute, we've been voting for one party, no matter what party it is.
Yeah.
One party rule is not good.
Yeah.
You got to have checks and balances. You got to have dialogue. You got to have debate.
You know, I'm seeing, I've had clients who are very blue, you know, very liberal, like West Coast liberal, moved to Hawaii, and they're like, oh my God, I went to Hawaiian Islands, they're like flying flags, and they're like, Hawaiian flag, Trump flag, American flag.
Yep.
They're going to church. What's going on
Absolutely.
out there? And
that's our people.
And I'm like, yeah, like Hawaii is not, you know, other places that have such a lopsided blue voting record look a certain way.
Yeah. Yep.
We're not that. Like we're
True.
I saw at one point most kids per capita, nuclear family centered. Yeah, like very, you know, a lot of religious beliefs in Hawaii.
Yeah.
You know, from different types of Christianity to Catholicism with Filipinos
immigrants,
and like immigrants. We're not that blue state of the West Coast.
We are not. And that's why I say if Hawaii would just activate our power to vote, we can flip Hawaii around overnight in one election. Because we have less than 40% of those who are eligible to vote who are actually voting in Hawaii. So we have less than 40% of adults deciding who runs government and how Hawaii is run. Now, I'm hoping that incidences recently with the COVID mandates and that piss local people off, that those things would encourage them to actually exercise their right to vote. Now, we did see it happen, and like you mentioned, right, so there's the limousine liberals versus the conservatives.
What is limousine liberals?
Limousine liberals. They're like the ones who buy it up in Port Lock, and you know they made their wealth. They want to come to Hawaii and live wonderfully. They'll buy a mansion for themselves. They can afford it, and those guys vote for like people like Bernie Sanders. You know,
well, those are the kind of people that are like. You know, we're painting with a broad brush here, right?
Yeah.
Well, those are the kind of people that are like, let the kids transition and do all that, but hey, on taxes, take it easy, yeah? Don't take too much of my money, though.
But you know, so what's crazy is these guys call for tax the rich, but yet they're the very ones who are going to use all these loopholes for themselves.
Yeah, of course.
Like Bernie Sanders, I mean, you know, his whole campaign was about how the rich don't pay their fair share.
Yeah.
And let's just tax them mostly and then not tax the poor and then redistribute their wealth out. That doesn't work.
It sounds good, though.
It sounds good, and I think that's why lots of the people in my generation, they buy into it.
Sounded good too.
Sounded good.
Sounds good.
Until they have, you know, they get married, have kids, they start paying bills, and like they realize, oh man, what's better is less government, less taxation. Let me control my own wealth for my own family.
Yeah.
But back to my point was, and so what we see is these two different classes. Waianae, Ewa Beach, Kapolei, West Oahu, traditionally has been a very blue area because of the unions.
Okay.
Most of the workers out there are blue-collar workers.
Okay.
Right? What we've seen this last election was it flipped Republican. It flipped red.
Oh, really? So I moved away. After high school, I was 22, so 2006, I joined the Coast Guard. And then I only came back in 2019.
Wow.
I would come back every year, multiple times a year, but I wasn't like living back home, you know? And so... Yeah, like the idea of people in Hawaii having, you know, flags that represent like conservative values or whatever, I guess, recently I've seen it. And so that's how. But
Yeah.
20 years ago, it wasn't like that, yeah?
Was not like that.
Yeah,
because
come to think of it.
Because the big social issues that divide us today weren't really partisan divides back then. Like, for example, in 1990, Republican and Democrats could agree on issues like same-sex marriage. They could agree on issues like abortion, right?
Yeah.
They were pro-life Democrats back then.
Yeah.
Because those social issues were very divisive, but you had unions within party lines. Today, I mean, if you stand on this way on this issue, one party will just attack you on both sides.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's just the way we are nationally. I think national politics has interjected here in Hawaii, but that's why I'm pretty confident in the future of Hawaii, because local families here, we don't have that radical views. Like, for example, Ewa Kapolei, the labor areas were very blue, but yet now they're all flipping red because the workers are realizing, wait a minute, my cousin's in Vegas now, my brother's in Vegas now because they can't afford to live here. So why are we voting in the same type of people, the same establishment machine in Hawaii that's controlled everything for 75 years?
Yeah.
We have to vote differently. So what we're seeing is areas with the high labor workforce, Ewa, Kapolei, even the North Shore, Brenton won. Yeah. He flipped that one red. Yeah, so we knocked out a bunch of incumbents this last year. And what we're seeing is, like, for example, Trump. Trump is very controversial here in Hawaii. And I know there are people, even conservatives, who don't like him. Yeah. Liberals definitely don't. But I think there are even conservatives who say, well, like you said, just his style is not conducive to our way of life, right?
Yeah, he's a loud, arrogant haole.
Right. And so that does not go well with
to my people out there, like, I'm half haole. I don't say that with a negative connotation. Mike here behind the camera. So I don't mean that. I'm saying it facetiously, right? He's a loud, boisterous, probably narcissistic and arrogant, Caucasian male.
Yep.
Rich at that, right?
And rich at that. But yet Trump did very well on the Waianae Coast. Yes, why? Why did Trump win the Waianae Coast?
Hey, aloha, everyone. This is Derek Okahashi, host of Podcast Hawaii. Thank you for listening. I hope you're enjoying the show. I have two things to ask. Whether you're listening to this on a streaming platform or on YouTube, please go comment and follow and do all the things to gas us up and keep us going. And in that comment, let me know who you'd like for me to have a conversation with next. Is there an interesting university professor, someone who owns a business, a controversial person, a politician? Whoever you want to see on this show, please let me know in the comment section of whatever platform you're on. Also, I am a real estate agent and a real estate team leader. My small team, Core Team Hawaii, is one of the top real estate teams in all of Hawaii. So if you have anything in real estate, if you have any need at all in real estate, please think of Core Team Hawaii first. Go to coreteamhawaii.com. The link will be in the description of all of these shows moving forward. Book a call with me. Let's get you taken care of in real estate. Back to the show. I think it's a confluence of things. I think that... So you're how old? You're 25.
25.
Wow. And so I'm 39. Be 40 next year. I grew up with no social media, and then social media came. Yep. And then social media, when we still had AOL dial-up, I don't know if you know what that is. And then, fast forward, we have iPhones and the connectivity that the human race has now. I don't think it's too fast. It all came too fast, and so now. The loudest voices, get the most attention. And I don't think social and gender issues would be so much the focus if we somehow canceled the internet.
I agree. And that's why I say when I take a stand for something like parental rights, now the left, and you know what's crazy is...
What is parental right? Why is that even... What is parental rights?
So, okay, I did a bill this last session called the Parental Rights in Education Bill. The Democrats and the media called it the Don't Say Gay bill. So basically, it was the same bill that Florida passed, in that because there was such a big controversy over, these cartoon porn books in schools and stuff, lots of parents are like, I don't want my kids seeing that, so leave that out of school. So Florida passed a bill, and the governor signed it into law, in that the issue of gender instruction should not be taught in kindergarten to grade 3. Just let them be kids and no sexual education in kindergarten to 3rd grade, which I think is a reasonable thing. Because
the audacity.
Back in my day, we had sex ed. I'm sure you did too in school.
Not until
7th grade for me.
I don't know if I had an intermediate.
Yeah.
I remember Miss Campbell at Campbell. Her name was Miss Campbell in high school.
Yeah.
I don't know if we had it then.
So for me, it was 7th grade at Waipahu Intermediate, and what they taught was the biology of how a baby is made, the science of it, and they always taught abstinence, wait till you're married. And this is a public school.
Yeah.
And once again, this isn't partisan, this was just common sense.
Yeah.
And they taught you about diseases, what to avoid. Okay. Today, we're teaching kids in like kindergarten and 1st grade, showing them cartoon instructions on how to like play with themselves and stuff. To me, that's perversion. Yeah. Now, by taking that stand, I've got so much kickback from the left saying, oh, this bill is going to add to the trans suicide rate. You're attacking certain people. I'm not attacking nobody. I'm just saying that parents have the rights over their children's education. And to me, that's not partisan, that's common sense. And I'm pretty sure that most parents out there who have kids, doesn't matter what party you're in, they would agree. Like, leave my kids alone. I decide what they learn. I decide what happens in their life.
Can I play devil's advocate a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not that I disagree with what you're saying, but one argument a leftist might say is, well, now kids have iPhones, though. Mm-hmm. So now they need to be equipped earlier because they're going to see Pornhub earlier than we saw it or than I saw it. Well, maybe some merit to that and cause for discussion, Sure. Also, parents having a right to dictate their kids' education implies that public education is an American right. But pre-Rockefeller and the money he put into forming this education system that spits out compliant, complicit employees.
I agree.
School wasn't approached the same way.
Right.
So people nowadays who are true libertarian or capitalist, like, send your kids to a Catholic school then. If you don't like them, see 2 penguins having sex.
Right. And so there are lots of families.
Is it a right for you to go to Nilani Mauka Elementary and they don't show the penguin book? Is that a right? Or should you make more money and send your kids to Christian school if you want that?
I think right now in our current state, if you are a strong believer in faith values or whatever, at this point you have no choice. Because if you send your kids to the public school down the road, they're going to see stuff that you would not want them seeing.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, this is America. This country and government works for we the people. And that's why I'm a big proponent of elected school boards. You realize that Hawaii is the only state in the whole country out of all 50 that has no elected school boards?
No.
We have one board. So in most states, you have school boards per district.
Okay.
And that board governs the schools in that particular community or jurisdiction. Here in Hawaii, we're the only state, we have one board over all public schools statewide.
For the whole state?
For the
Not
whole
even
state?
Like Maui County?
No, for the whole state, one board, and they're all appointed positions by the governor.
Oh.
So folks don't realize that the will in the education department is not being fueled by the parents. See, in most states, the communities vote in their school board members.
That makes sense to me.
Because the parents and the families, they control what happens in that community.
Yeah.
In Hawaii, that's not the case. You show up to a school board meeting and protest or, be a public member to testify. I mean, they'll give you your 1 minute or 2 minutes, but nobody listens to you.
They essentially have absolute power, right?
They have absolute power, and they're all appointed by the governor. So whoever wins the governor's race, they get to appoint. And to me, that's not right. So our House GOP caucus this last session proposed multiple bills that would decentralize the Department of Education by creating multiple elected school boards, one per county. So one board over Oahu, one board over Kauai, one board over Maui County, one board over Big Island. And the people on that island, they're going to vote for the board members.
Yeah,
because
that's a start. Oahu's a hard one, right? Because you have Kaka'ako and then you have Makaha in the same island.
So there could be perhaps multiple school boards, but we propose that just to have the idea and the conversation to start going regarding elected school boards and per jurisdictions.
An example, just because I like to be devil's advocate. an example of appointing a director of education or whatever the title is.
Superintendent.
Well, at the federal level.
Federal level, yeah.
An example of why that's bad is Trump. He brought in Betsy DeVos or whatever her name.
DeVos, yeah.
DeVos. She had like a bachelor's and like had never done anything, but her family gave hundreds of millions to the GOP.
Yeah.
That's an example of like Trump. I'm gonna drain the swamp. It's like, well, you kind of added to it on this one, buddy.
It's true.
Obama's guy had like won awards for curriculum development and like expanding charter schools and was like, oh yeah, seems like the guy you would get.
But
Betsy DeVos was like, oh my dad gives $1 billion to Republican Party, so.
So in essence, I agree on the fact that Trump did not drain the swamp to the extent that he should have.
Well, just on that, I don't know politics well.
On the issue of education and the federal Department of Education, I believe that entire department should be abolished.
Let's keep it state.
It is unnecessary.
Yeah.
That is a local issue. The parents in that community, they control education. It's their school, their tax dollars pay for it. Do you also realize that Hawaii spends the most per student than any other state in the country, yet we have the lowest test scores nationwide?
We spend the most?
Yes. Per
Why
student. Government.
You know one thing, when I moved from the mainland to Hawaii, I was like, oh, the lunch is cheap over here. 75 cents. Yeah, school lunch, like 75 cents for lunch. On the mainland, it was like $4. Then my wife was an elementary school teacher. I would say still is because she's highly trained and really good at it, but took some time off. So when she taught in California, it was like 30 kids per teacher, sometimes more, whatever. And here she's like, it's so good. It's like 21. Plus we have a resource. Like it's just so much better teaching at the elementary level. She's like, it's such a better environment. So in that sense, it makes sense that we spend more. Kind of does make sense.
Well, I mean, I think that varies on what school you're at too, because I mean, there are some schools like Campbell and Kapolei where they're over capacity and they shove kids in classrooms. So I think it all depends on your community or what school you're at. But overall, we spend the most per kids and we have the lowest test scores nationwide.
What do you think? Well, so here's the other. My wife, teaching in California, teaching here, being married to a teacher and you know, that experience, I hear how it starts at home. So the kids with certain issues, it starts at home. Kids who are like squared away, starts at home. Now there's personality differences, but there's like the naughty kid because he's hyper but he's respectful, and then there's the like chaotic kid who obviously has no structure in his life. So do we lack in school results and testing because of our culture and how we don't prioritize education the same way? Or is the government not doing a good job at enforcing teaching rules?
I think it's a matter of both, but I'm also a big questioner of standardized testing as well, because you're throwing all kids into one block and saying you have to meet this criteria to be successful, right? So their version of success was you got to hit this test score, you got to have this SAT score to get into this college or whatever.
Way too much emphasis on that, I'll tell you.
Right, and we're not focusing on what true education is. True education is not filling their minds with information. It's developing character, the whole person, which includes information, but that also includes how to engage in conversation with people, how to be respectful to your elders. I think we're missing that part of education in Hawaii schools today, and also a big part that's missing is civic engagement and civic education. All the adults in my life growing up, my mom, my dad, my uncles and aunties, no one voted. And they were all products of Hawaii public schools. They went to schools in the 80s and in the 70s and 80s. And civics was like absent. Like no one taught them. Like,
well, sorry to interrupt you.
Sure.
In our culture, though, there's this whether you're super ku'e, like rahui pa'aina, anti, like we're legally occupied and all of the, whether you're super on that side or you're just not, but you're just of Hawaii and you're local. You either have an overtone or at least an undertone of like Yeah, all that like
Right. No need, no worry.
representatives.
Yeah.
That's all like holiday mainland stuff.
Right.
Like, I just gotta work and
Yep.
get by, right?
Yep.
So again,
And
cultural. Is it culture or is it education? It's
I
both,
think
right?
I think the educational system has impacted our cultural mentality over government intentionally.
I think it's an education system not intended for our culture. It's incompatible. So, for
Well, yeah,
example,
true.
the people talk about Scandinavian test scores.
Mm.
Look at their approach, though.
Mm.
4-hour school,
Yep.
go home early, play
Right.
more.
Yep.
Look at Japan's test scores.
Mm.
Similar results,
Mhm.
different
Mhm.
approach.
Right.
Extra school. Like my wife would have the Japanese parents like, can you give me more worksheets? Like, where can I find more work? We need more work. Like my kid doesn't have enough work.
Yeah.
But they have similar results. But if you
Yep.
switched methods and put them on each other, you probably wouldn't end up with the same results,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So I think that maybe the approach isn't conducive to our culture.
Yeah.
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 Not that
absolutely.
it's bad inherently. Maybe I think it kind of is.
I think our current approach is definitely not conducive to our culture here in
Yeah.
Hawaii. Yeah. Because
And
we are a very family-oriented state.
yeah.
So what we should be doing is encouraging. In fact, what you see is in society to have less crime, to have more employment, you want to have an educated populace.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have people with values. And, you know, some folks call that religion or whatever, but you got to have some kind of values. What's right and what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from the parent. And that's why parental involvement is so important. Like
Yeah.
parents have to spend time with their kids and taking an integral part of their life and teaching them what's right, what's wrong. Because I know we're so busy trying to make money, trying to live life. And
It's hard.
oftentimes parents just, hey, here's the iPad, here's the iPhone, because it's easier. But if we don't take if we're not sitting in the front seat with the kids and teaching them how to drive through this crazy thing called life, it's not going to be good. Because I tell you, social media and what the government's pushing out, what Hollywood's pushing out, it is breaking down the nuclear family. It's teaching kids that having a mom and dad is bad, that the nuclear family is the problem with this country, when in reality, what we need now more than ever is families to come together.
Yeah.
Mother and father, faith is super important, all right? I mean, what built this country or what brought us to our pinnacle?
Yeah, I think
was faith.
I don't think that, let's say you were agnostic or even atheist.
Yep.
I don't think that means you have to be anti values that align
Right.
with Christianity.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
agree.
it's like America was built on Christian and Puritan values, and
That's
that
right.
it is what it is.
It is.
You can't take that away. Like Japan was
yeah.
built on empirical Japan,
Right.
you know,
Right.
values or whatever.
Right. China was built upon a dynasty rule,
Yeah,
right?
dynastic
So,
rules.
yeah.
Yeah, like those, that is what it is. And
Right.
so then to apply, you know, modern neoliberalism or whatever to China, well, not going to work. It's the wrong application.
Yeah.
To apply Vietnamese culture
Right.
to Russia, not going to work, right?
Right.
And yeah, we're definitely trying to. There seems to be a social shift in America
Yeah.
that is, it's a lot all at once.
It's a lot all at
It's
once.
a lot all
And
at
so
once.
that's where my whole faith part comes in, because I mean, as someone who's a believer, right? So you kind of like have this thing called prophecy in mind, and I don't want to get too deep into that because I'm a firm believer in having the government and the church separated. That way, there's no persecution, because there are some politicians who want to legislate based upon their beliefs or their faith, and to me that's not good, because no matter what religion it is, when you start imposing your beliefs on other people, it always leads to persecution. How did Rome fall? The same way, right? And so we're at that point now in this country where if you don't believe the same way I do, I'm going to use the power of government to persecute you.
Yeah.
And that is very dangerous. We should encourage opinions.
Yeah.
We should encourage different trains of thoughts. I mean, you look back at our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, Hamilton, Adams, Some of these guys had major beefs with each other, but yet they go down in history as prominent American heroes.
They had beef with each other.
Oh, yeah, like pissed off, like scrapping, nuts over policy.
Well, civility was like celebrated in that time, right?
Right.
So there was this, you're going from barbaric times into technologies, like the horse and buggy to the car to the, from the 1400s to the Industrial Revolution. And, you figure you don't have plumbing, you don't have toothbrush, you don't have these things. Civility and mannerisms and whatnot and education are what distinguishes you.
True.
Now you can go buy something at Pro Rich to distinguish yourself. It's too cheap. It's too superficial.
Right.
Yeah.
No. But these guys understood the principles that built this country, and that you can have your belief structure and you can really believe in it and live in a free society and fight for what you believe in. I can have the exact opposite view and fight for what I believe in. But you have to understand that in this free country, everybody has that freedom.
So what the liberal would tell you is they didn't treat black people that way.
But
these amazing founding fathers you're talking about.
And that's true. They did not.
They didn't treat Hawaiians that way.
And that's true. They did not.
So it's a bad rule. It's a bad constitution.
No, because they broke their own rules. Yeah. They were the hypocrites, right? And I think over time we realized that as a country, and we took progress to make right the wrongs. We truly did. This country
we're still working on it.
Absolutely,
still work to be done.
We are not a racist country like some folks say. This country is systemically racist. No, we're not. There are racists in the country, and there are a lot of them. But our country as a whole, we are not a racist country.
What does systemically racist even mean? So I saw a study, or they did like an experiment in California, I think, like in where he's from, in the Sac area or something. But they sent out resumes, and one at the top it said Joe, and at the top of the other one it said Jose. They put an S. Joe got way more callbacks than Jose. Is that? And I think that would happen today. Yeah. Frankly, but I mean, I think that when I was young, I got job interviews, and they're like, Okahashi, you Okahashi. Oh, yeah. And then the rest of the interviews just seemed kind of like we're going through the steps. Yeah. Yeah. I've experienced that as a young man selling ceiling fans. These guys come and treat me bad, and then I give them my business card, and they go, Okahashi, oh, you're fluent Japanese. Oh, I'm going to ask for you next time then. Right. I'm like, oh, you just shit on me for 15 minutes. Well,
because you give a Japanese last name.
Yeah, now you treat me good. And so...
And that's happened here in Hawaii.
Is that systemic racism, or is that just...
I think that's cultural appropriation. And I think to call someone like that a racist is not right. Because, like, for example, in Hawaii during the plantation era, now we're in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, post-plantation, the communities would hui together. The Filipinos would come together. The Japanese would come together, and they hire their own. Yeah. They help their own. They support their own. That's still happening today. It's still happening. And to call them racist, I mean, these guys are not racist.
Well, no, people don't call it racist when you have a Chinatown and they stick together, or you have on the mainland, you have Italian town and they stick together. Right. It would only be racist if you have like Haole town, and like, oh, we're all white. And we all kind of we support white business here. That would be racist.
And so you have,
I'm not saying
current day, for sure.
Devil's advocate there.
And then current day, you have like things like Black Lives Matter, right? So that
can't be racist because it's black.
But they are.
Yeah.
But they are. Yeah. I mean, they're one of the most racist. I mean, you can see.
I grew up in Florida first before I moved to Hawaii.
Yeah.
The school, like the intermediate I went to before I came to Irima, 80-90% black, maybe more. And my best friends were black, but also the worst racism I ever experienced in my life was from people of African American descent. But me being a victim about it does nothing.
Exactly, and that's the key, and that's what we have to teach our kids. That is what we have to teach, and I think that's where the left gets this wrong. Is they're imposing victim mentality. Oh, you can't do this because your skin's black.
So we need to legislate and
legislation won't change anything.
Yeah, we need to do all these things so that you have an easier life.
Right.
And I don't think that's a
Once
path.
again, in their mindset, government's the solution. So how do we solve this problem? Government must do something. I don't think it's that easy. I think to change the hearts of people, you cannot legislate changing hearts. You can't pass bills and then, like, same thing with the gun laws. You can't just pass laws and then now it changes society. Mm-hmm. Changing society comes from the inside. People have to want to change. They have to want to work towards righteousness or what's right.
Don't you think we need some huge event? We need, like Joe Rogan said, we need aliens to come, or we need a huge war.
I think we're here right now with the Lahaina fire. I think Hawaii is at that point.
Hawaii
right now.
has united, and it's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
So it's Hawaii uniting is beautiful, and me moving back from California to Hawaii was so refreshing. It was so I was like, oh, thank God, I brought my kids back here to raise them here, where it's still sane. Because I came from the Bay, I was right next to Berkeley, and I worked at Stanford.
Oh man!
And it was just so hyper politicized.
Woke as you can be.
The epicenter of wokeism, right? That's where I came from.
Right.
But I still refuse to say I'm Republican or conservative. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm standing still, but the whole thing is shifting left. And so I find myself a little bit more right.
Right. That's where lots of families feel today.
I feel like I've not changed much, but the thing has just kind of gone this way.
I would have to agree with you because I wasn't raised, like I said, in a household that was like political. Like nobody voted, so no one even cared growing up. So why did I, in a blue state, choose to run Republican and then fight for these values? Because
you grew up in a Christian family.
In a
right?
Christian family, which is not most, but I think a lot of families in Hawaii have that upbringing of faith, family, and freedom. Mm-hmm. So when I look at party platform and say, what do they stand for? What do they stand for? I aligned with the right, because to me that's just common sense. That's our way of life. But the one party, like you said, is shifting so far left that lots of moderates are now finding themselves voting conservative now.
Like the first time I started to kind of feel like, well, if I had to vote, I would go this way. And I didn't like it. I was like, I'm not.
You got to choose one or the other. Right?
I was like, I almost wanted to pull the liberals back. Like, come back over here to sanity, so I don't have to hang out with, in my mind, figuratively, with these conservative people. Because I was like, why is it conservative to not want to, mutilate kids or
Right.
Like that shouldn't have to make me.
It shouldn't
I shouldn't be conservative because I feel that way.
But this is the world we live in, and it's crazy to even think that, like child mutilation. If I stand up and say, I don't think that children under the age of majority, which is 18, should have the right to change their body physically. Mm-hmm. If the parents consent, that's their family's business, and this is a free country. But in my opinion, they should wait till they're 18. But by taking that stand, they're going to label you as a right-wing. You're a religious fanatic.
Not in Hawaii, though, right?
Oh, I get it all the time. You should see the emails that come in.
Where do these people live? Manoa.
But you know what's crazy is lots of them are mostly mainland haoles. Yeah. Even on Instagram, it's not the locals who are pissed off. It's the mainland transplants who moved to Hawaii. They're like, you're a Trumper, you're a right winger Trumper. Da, da, da. Yeah, so it's those guys who are pushing back, but they're loud and vicious, and they control the leadership of one party here in Hawaii. So lots of the regular, like for example, right here in Aiea, Sam Kong, good friend of mine. He's an awesome Democrat representative. Yet we agree on pretty much everything.
Okay.
Right? So, and that's the kind, in my opinion, people we should be electing into office who have values. They don't work for their party, they work for their community.
What makes him a Democrat? If he agrees with you on a lot of stuff, what makes him a Democrat?
Aiea.
From Aiea?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. When I moved home, I moved from the Bay. Stanford started to get kind of toxic, and we came home, and this isn't a good thing inherently. And so Mike's from the mainland, just moved here, our video guy behind us, and so this isn't like a good thing if you read the manuscript, but I would hear people go, bruh, so gay. You know, local people, right? Bruh,
Right.
You're so gay.
Yeah.
Even my gay friend says that, hey, that was gay.
Yeah.
And I was like,
That was a slang.
wow. And nobody's like going to prison.
Yeah.
No one's like, they're not calling human resources necessarily. Like you could just say something. And I would be super timid. I got a job when I first moved back home. And I was like walking on eggshells, and people would do certain things. Like, and I would be like, oh, you could do that around here. And they'd be like, why are you so scared of everything? I was like,
wow. From where you came from.
Stanford, places like that. Like I asked this girl, she's from Africa. And I was like, oh, where are you from? Like, where? And she's just instantly offended. Like, why does it matter?
See.
And I was like, no. Let me tell you about Hawaii. And she's like, it shouldn't matter where I'm from, first of all. And I'm like, no, I want to celebrate you. Like, I want to learn about you, you know? But you couldn't ask that.
But why is that?
Because what they're taught in these colleges and universities is the victim mentality. Is victim mentality. So that girl, she already had it in her mindset that you're coming at her in an angle that you're different because you're Black. Yeah. Or you're dark skinned or you're from Africa or whatever. Well, in Hawaii, like you said, we celebrate diversity. It's not that we feel a certain way. We're just curious to know where exactly you come from because it's a cool thing.
I mean, you can get it too, though. Like, Filipino, Samoa, I mean, we have songs about it on the radio. Like, you could racially get it here.
No.
But
it's that we come together and celebrate our cultures, and we all make fun of each other, and it's a cool thing. Like, nobody cares.
Yeah, you go Bondage, you see Hawaiians. Yeah. You know, you go to Hawaii, we see Japanese. Like, that's a beautiful thing.
That's a way. Yeah, absolutely.
On the one more thing on the whole gender thing, Hawaii is unique because we still aren't like, it's not the focus of our world, like, you know, teaching gender studies in the same way it is in like California or whatever. But at the same time, long before Joe Biden and Hillary were okay with gay marriage, we all have a cousin who was like a Mahu queen, you know, or something, like, and it was okay, right? We're unique in that way, and I think that's beautiful about Hawaii.
Absolutely. And once again, Hawaii is Hawaii, and this goes back thousands of years. They always have that one uncle or one, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's not like it's a recent phenomenon. It goes back thousands of years of human existence.
Yeah.
Archaeology has proved it. But I think here in Hawaii, what the problem that families have is not saying that this is okay. Their problem they're having is, why are you forcing my kid to look at this stuff in school and think a certain way about it? Like, why can't you leave that conversation to me as a parent?
Yeah.
Like, you know, because different parents raise their kids in different ways, and it's their right to raise their kid the way they want. Once they're 18, this is a free country. You can have whatever beliefs you want.
Yeah.
But that's the problem that families are having. And so what we're seeing is across the country, even in Virginia, that was traditionally a blue state. It recently flipped red with Glenn Youngkin because he focused on parental rights. Parents were saying, we're liberal, but we don't want you teaching our kids things that we don't want them learning. And I think that is one issue here in Hawaii that is waking up people to realize how radical the left is. They're not just liberal, they're radical.
Yeah.
And there are some traditional liberals, and I love those guys. They just have them calling, hey, awesome guy.
Yeah.
Old school Democrat.
Yeah.
But the radical side is just, it's to me, it's not American. It's socialist, it's Marxist, it's anti-God, it's anti-family. It's intentionally trying to break down the strength of this country, which is the power of the family.
I think I was listening to Joe Rogan or something, but they're talking about how other empires, like the Roman Empire, when they've fallen, they were focused on gender.
Yes.
And sex.
Yes, absolutely.
There's like this frivolous point.
Right. Look at Rome. You know,
there's nothing, like, they're not focused on food and on economy, you know, like that.
On legitimate matter.
Yeah, so like you're too comfortable. You have too much plastic stuff to buy at Walmart.
Right.
You have 80-month financing on your Chevy Tahoe.
Right.
You have all of these things that lead you to live this, you know, your credit card's got your Louis Vuitton bags on it or whatever. And so you're so frivolous and there's nothing important to focus on anymore. And so now they're focused on gender studies.
Yep. That's an actual degree, by the way, gender studies.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
but yeah, no, you're right. I mean, and the same thing applies not just with gender, but other issues here in Hawaii. Is we're so focused on trying to be the good, wonderful Americans. Like, for example, HECO, Hawaiian Electric, the wildfires. You know, these last few years, recommendations were made to both the county and HECO to do things that would mitigate something like this from happening. But instead, most of their time and resources went towards lobbyists coming to us guys at the legislature trying to build more renewable this and renewable that. And the focus, once again, wasn't on the security of people, on making sure that we are the most powerful state with energy, that we have enough energy to produce and make money so that we all can live good lives. Instead, it's going to focus on this globalist ideology of let's build more wind farms, let's build more solar farms, let's build more this, let's shut down the coal plant, which they did 2 years ago. And now our electric bills have all gone up.
Our electric bills are a lot.
They're up.
They're up.
It's a real thing. And yet you had like 2 Republicans vote against it. Everybody else voted yes. And did they know? Of course. I mean, what person with common sense would not know?
But who wants to burn coal?
Well, and that's what they're saying. Who wants to burn coal? But there are other avenues.
I mean, ideally, I don't want to burn coal.
Of course not. Of course not.
Well, I don't know this topic enough.
But until you can get a reliable alternative that produces enough energy that fits the needs of Hawaii's people, why would you take it away without producing an alternative?
Yeah, the other thing too is Hawaii. We're already very vulnerable, right?
Yes.
In the supply chain, geographically, etc.
Very much so.
We don't. And if I look at the carbon output overall of the world, China and India leading by exponentially.
Right.
I don't sacrifice and make us more vulnerable to, we're already vulnerable enough.
Yeah.
I don't move in that direction when I know that we're a drop in the bucket.
Yep.
Now, a lot of drops in the bucket fill up the bucket. So
right.
I don't want to burn coal. I do want clean air. It's a very Polynesian, it's in line with our values to take care of the earth, to take care of the land.
Being good stewards of our Aina, stewards of our land.
But in this Western world, we're vulnerable, and I don't want to make us more vulnerable.
I agree. Totally. And I think for some place like Hawaii, having environmental laws is very important, which is why my concern with Josh Green's recent proclamation to eliminate some of those environmental protections is quite alarming. Because in Hawaii, you have no room to get it wrong.
Yeah.
On the mainland, you can mess up and move down 4 miles down the road and start new. Hawaii, can.
Yeah.
If you mess up the water, it's done.
Yeah.
Which we've seen with Red Hill, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no room. Yeah.
The water table's broken.
There's no room for that. And so we have to be good stewards of our environment. But do we, in the name of global equity and climate equity, do we take the coal plant that's producing right now energy for the whole island and say, sorry guys, it's not good for the planet, so your light bills will all go up drastically, while China and India keep burning away and the climate is not being healed at all? And first of all, I mean, in all honesty, ask this question with all honesty. How do you think appropriating $200 or $100 million of our tax dollars can somehow stop Mother Earth from doing her thing? Do you think that we can spend enough money to where the climate stops changing?
I don't want to pretend like I know more about this than I do. Yeah. I've not well studied on it.
Well, that's good that you admit that, because there are lots of politicians who claim to be experts in this.
Yeah.
And that, if we just spend more money and resources, no. I mean, we're wasting tax dollars when we have local families here who can't even afford to pay rent. Like, there's so many bigger issues to focus on.
Well, you're fear mongering, because if it's true, if it's like, hey guys, if we don't reach certain carbon neutrality by X date, there's a tipping point.
The doomsday scenario.
And doomsday. If that's true, then I'll start catching bus tomorrow. We all go. But
that's if that's true. I mean,
but they would say that 90% of scientists, there's a consensus, pretty much scientific
The
consensus.
same scientists said take the vaccine, you guys will be okay. Okay, I mean this is the same scientists who say that. I mean these guys work for this globalist movement, and they're Soros. I mean it's real. I mean whatever.
The money
at this time.
I'm not suicidal, by the way.
I'm not suicidal either. Just got it on the record. But people have to stand up against it because I think too many politicians are afraid to say what's on their heart. And you are never going to please everybody. You will always have guys who love you and those who hate you. Yeah. That's just the way life is. But if you don't take a stand for what you believe in, your future generations will perish because of it. We have to stand for it. If you believe in faith, stand for it. Freedom, stand for it. Because
hard, right? When you got to work 3 jobs to live here.
Yes, and once again, that's intentional. That's intentional. Keep people so busy. What's that one saying, that acronym busy, BUSY, burden under Satan's yoke, where you're so busy you have no
I never heard that.
time. Yeah. And there are lots of families who are so busy, and that's why, now we're going to get to the faith side. I believe that taking a Sabbath is super important for everybody. No matter what sector you're in, business, government, private, whatever, you got to take a Sabbath. One day, 24-hour period. God put that in by design because we all need to recalibrate, reconnect, and focus on family, focus on God, and recenter. I think.
My real estate clients, I should focus on Christians. They leave me alone on the weekend.
There you go. You get a day off.
Yeah. No, I think there are a lot of things, whether it be fasting, the Sabbath, that, like I went to I'm actually agnostic. That's where I stand right now. Mm-hmm. I used to be a part of the church. Used to be Grace Bible. It's called ProSide now.
Yeah.
And I'm obsessive, right? I mean, look at all this. I'm obsessive, and so
stuff.
I told my brother-in-law, if I go back to church, if I become, if I consider myself Christian, I'm gonna start a church. Like that's just where I'm just obsessive, right? But I went to my old pastor and I was like, hey, I think my wife wants to come back and would enjoy coming back. This is where I am. Or are you okay with me coming? I wanted to check with him respectfully because I was like, I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. A Sabbath, great idea. Because I've been grinding at this business thing for a while. I should have taken more Sabbath. I should have taken more days for, to spiritually just, rewind. Fasting, I could benefit from, that. You're a Seventh-day Adventist, right?
Yes, I am.
Longest living people in America, amongst longest living people in the world.
Blue zones.
At the core of the religion is you have this temple. Eat better, don't eat too much, avoid this,
temperance,
eat more of this. And the results are the results.
Yes.
You guys live quite a long time.
Not just us. If you follow the Bible health laws, you will live longer.
Yeah. You mentioned Lahaina, and I don't want to end this without getting there.
Sure.
We'll do this again, but Mike has to get going at a certain time. But tell me about the bill. So Biden, you said, this is what I was like, hey, you and I talked about getting together. Let's do it because I want to hear about this.
Yeah.
Biden said, here's a FEMA proposal to fund FEMA because FEMA had been bankrupt, right? But
not bankrupt. They're running low on their cash.
Running low on funds. So let's push $12 billion into FEMA, and then hidden in there was 30-something billion for Ukraine.
So the way it works is that wasn't a bill. So that was a supplemental request from the White House. So the administration has to go to Congress to ask for money because all money comes from Congress, right? Okay. So Biden, yes. So because FEMA is running low on funds, by the way, right now it's August 23rd, 2023. FEMA's out there at the Four Seasons on Maui. They're living it up large, 1,000 rooms a night.
That's bad optics.
Just FYI.
They're staying at the Four Seasons?
Oh, and not just there, at the Grand Wailea, lots of different places.
That's
and some rooms are $1,500 a night right now, helping the victims of Maui, and yet FEMA's, I don't know, to me that's wrong. That's just my opinion.
Government's wasteful, but
absolutely
inherently.
So when they come, we need more funds to help the people, yet you guys are basically on vacation. Yeah. On vacation. Okay, anyway.
That's bad optics.
I digress. Back to the point. What was the point again? Lahaina.
They're trying to get Ukraine money on the backs of Ukraine, of Hawaii, of Maui, of Lahaina?
Yeah. So
how's that? Gotta be. There's some liberal people like, Derek, are you a freaking right winger? challenge him. They're sitting there listening, and that can't be the story, right? They can't be say, hey, let's give Hawaii $12 billion and let's give Ukraine another even dollar as a result.
So Congress is not going to give Hawaii money specifically. They're going to give FEMA money, and right now their big project is Hawaii. So in essence, the funds is for Hawaii, in essence. But each appropriation will come through a different bill. So Congress will put it in a different bill. But at the same time that Biden is asking for these appropriations, he's also asking Congress to re-up billions to Ukraine.
And it was all put in the supplemental request.
In that one request was money for FEMA and money for Ukraine.
And you couldn't just put the money for FEMA, which in a roundabout way is intended for Hawaii, motivated. If not all for Hawaii, they're at a minimum funding FEMA on the recent emotions of Hawaii, right?
Yes, and the thing is, FEMA should be funded regardless because things happen, and we have to have a federal response, right?
Yeah.
But when you start, so here's what's not sitting right with lots of locals here is how is it that we get $700 because our house burnt to the ground, and yet we're going to send Ukrainians billions and billions of dollars. Also, people who come into this country illegally, migrants, not their fault, it's our fault, government. We give them $2,200 a month, and yet we're going to give American citizens in Maui who lost everything $700. And granted, yes, that's just the first installment.
Sure.
But it's been 2 weeks, guys.
Yeah.
It's been 2 weeks and all they got was $700. To me, this is America. We're a lot better than that. We're the most strongest country in the world, the most rich country in the world. We should have the resources to drop money to our people who need it desperately at this time.
Yeah.
But instead, Biden, he flies in for less than 6 hours. He flies in, he's at the press conference, ground zero. He gets every single name wrong. Brian Schatz, Maisie Her, Ed Chase, Jill Tokuda, and who was the other one? The mayor of Maui, Rick Bassin. Like, seriously, can't this guy, this is one of the worst disasters in Hawaii's history. You would think you come prepared. But what I see, and this is just my opinion, is someone who doesn't really care. He doesn't really care. He came for less than 6 hours. Then they go to the center where there's a gathering. Mm-hmm. He falls asleep on the table.
Well, he's old.
He's the president of the United States.
Whether he should be president is a different
He's
thing,
old, but
if you're...
then you should not be president.
Well, yeah,
yes,
maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
He should not
I'm
be
not
president.
saying Democrats shouldn't be president.
If you're not physically up to it, but my thing was...
cognitively.
Yeah, mentally and cognitively, the utter disrespect.
Yeah.
Talking about likening their tragedy to his kitchen fire that was put out in 20 minutes, and he almost lost his wife, his Corvette, his 67 Corvette, and his cat.
Hear all this. I don't spend my time.
To me, that's insensitive. Why would you even say that to people who lost their auntie and uncle, their mom and dad, their kids who were left at home because school was out?
Well, so what about this request? Is it getting approved? When will we know if it was approved?
So Congress has to appropriate. So my office is currently writing to Speaker McCarthy to make sure that FEMA gets funding and that you guys deal with the Ukraine issue separately. Because there's politics over that.
Not in the same request.
Shouldn't be in the same request.
Let's say Americans agree that we should send more money to Ukraine. Let's just say, hypothetically.
Right.
It shouldn't be in the same request.
Yeah,
you guys more extra paper
I agree.
in Washington, D.C. Kind of doing different requests.
And that's why I said that, and lots of the people on the left who, like Brian Schatz, there's, technically, there's so much technicals there, and Congress is very technical. But what people see on the ground level is we have a disaster that needs focus right now in America. And yet Biden's administration's more focused on sending more money to Ukraine. $40 billion should be coming to Hawaii right now to bring resources, to help locals, to help rebuild, to help do a bunch of things.
Yeah.
But yet we're going to go send more money to Ukraine. It's
offensive.
It's not right. It's offensive. And so granted, I understand there are people who are pissed off that I said that, but you know what? Somebody has to say it because nobody's calling them out. No one is saying anything about this. that locals get $700. I mean, there are 51 state reps. No one's saying anything to the national media or anyone. And so that's why I get so much, I mean, literally so much DMs from locals who are not political. Yeah. They don't care about party or Trump or Biden or whatever. They're just saying, thank you for saying what we feel.
Yeah.
Because it's not right. It's not right.
Well, thank you for being convicted in your own beliefs. Not everyone who listens to this is going to believe it. But you is going to agree with you. But you have to at least respect that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I appreciate it. The older I get, the more I find myself like, I don't think 5-year-old sex changes are for me. Yeah. I don't think that things of that nature. Right, I'm not ready to identify with you guys yet, though.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. We're all about the liberty to have your own beliefs in this country, and that's what makes us great. Is you can have your beliefs, I can have mine, but you know what? Let's have mutual respect. Yeah. And let's have dialogue on the issues. But to label someone off the bat on both sides, it happens on both sides. Yeah. We're adding to the problem.
So I wanted to end on on Instagram. There's a lot of outrage right now with the Lahaina thing. Yeah. There's a local influencer, Passion, who put out these guys trying to buy up land, and I made a comment from my real estate professional perspective, do this, don't do this, do. It's gotten 1,500 likes and blah blah, and but I've not seen a lot of people put out, the answers, the solutions, focus on the positive. There's a lot of outrage. Yeah. We in our real estate family, my partner Mahe, she lived on Maui for a decade, has a lot of friends. Their husbands are firefighters and cops, and I was in the Coast Guard. So I have friends who are from Maui who are just grinding right now, trying to help in the incident command structure. And my message to Hawaii people would be there are people who are trying to help. It may not feel like it in a certain instance. Maybe they don't agree. So maybe they want to get someone out of Lahaina, but they're like, no, I'm not leaving because there's looters. And well, that's a legitimate reason. But also, it's so toxic right now. So much asbestos and they're trying. People are trying. I don't know enough about it to speak with conviction and die on that hill, but I do know that we know some firefighters, some police officers, some first responders in the military. People are trying, especially local people. We've had too much supplies, and that's a beautiful thing. It's been beautiful to see Hawaii unite, right? Too many people, sending supplies, having to adjust, pivot and say, guys, now send funding, maybe generators if anything or whatever. And I think that's beautiful. So while our hearts are with Lahaina, in fact, I'll coach my team to put a link to some nonprofits. Awesome. in this description. Is there a specific one that you?
Well, the Hawaii Community Foundation.
Hawaii Community Foundation.
They're one of the main ones. CNHA as well.
I've been pushing CNHA, Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement.
They do good stuff.
Yeah. And they were having a matching before. I don't know if they still are. Anyway, support Maui to local people and non-local people who are grinding, helping. Thank you. FEMA, I don't know about the Grand Wailea. That looks bad. Thanks for coming. I enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right on. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
All right. Where can people find you? If they want to reach out to you, they want to connect with you?
Well, in my personal capacity, just DM me on Instagram. Okay. Or, as a representative, you can call my office, 586-8500.
Right on. That's 808. When I moved back home.
Oh, yeah, 808. Sorry.
Hawaii people don't say 808 because everybody knows,
Right.
In California, people would give the whole thing.
Now you got to enter it now, 808, or it won't work. So, yes, 808-586-8500.
Right on. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you.